We're out here today at Perris Raceway for Alta's introduction of their MX, Redshift MX and MXR motorcycles, both 2018 offerings, some slight differences between the two we're going to go over. They gave us a little brief dissertation on it. We're going to be able to take them out onto the track here shortly. So they've made huge leaps and bounds in these things. I was able to ride one of the early prototypes, and it was very impressive right away, but there were certainly things that were odd and needed some change, needed some adjustment. They've been working hard at that, so we're really anxious to see how the 2018 base model feels versus what I rode years ago, and then also this one, which has got some very, very big upgrades internally, should make a huge difference. So basically the difference between the two models is about $1,000, but what you get when you go to the MXR is upgraded WP suspension. So you've got the AER air fork on the front, which is significantly better than the OES or the WP 4CS fork that comes on the base model. If you know anything about the 4CS forks, not super awesome. So this is a big upgrade right there. And then they've made some changes to where the frame kind of meets the engine there. They've kind of rounded some things off. They were getting guys complaining of catch points with their boots, so they're trying to address that. And then the main change is to the battery and the firmware and all of the wiring that basically goes from the battery to the engine. And in just those things alone, by improving the battery, it generates a lot less heat when you use it. And by having a better design and creating less heat, they can pull more power out of it. So it basically went from about 42 horsepower on the base model to 50 horsepower on the MXR. So well worth that $1,000. So in terms of just horsepower numbers, you also got a little bit more grip on the seat, a few small little changes like that. But it's again, the suspension, different linkage on that suspension as well, obviously to match it, and then the changes to the firmware and the wiring and all the high voltage wiring and the battery itself. And that battery technology also has improved in terms of recharge time, down from a couple hours to like an hour and a half from completely empty. Most of the time they're finding if you're out at the track and you ride 20 minutes or 30 minutes, depending on your speed, you're not completely empty on the battery. So you could pull into your pits and get it charged back up in 30, maybe 45 minutes, back to top it off. So that's a reasonable time frame, I think. So we're gonna get these out on the track and check them out. We'll get back to you with our thoughts. We've got some time on both the MX and the MXR versions, and super impressed with these bikes. If you have not ridden an electric bike, it's definitely worth checking out. See if you can catch up with one of the demo days or ride a buddy's, but the torque is at its max number right from 0 RPMs, and that is such a fun feeling, something you wouldn't think, I don't know, of an electric motor you could get that much torque. But it's pretty amazing. 50 horsepower on this MXR with torque numbers that are very, very strong. So the difference between the two seems like exactly what they were trying to get at. They had complaints from the 2017 model. It was too soft. As the battery would die down, you'd actually lose some power, so they tried to correct that. And they wanted the price reduced. It was $15,000, the first model that came out. So as I mentioned, it's down to 10 for the MX and 11 for the MXR, approximately. So they've done that. They've addressed the suspension, the new WP stuff, the air fork, and the shock that goes with it. Much stiffer. Gives you a lot of room to adjust, where the 4CS fork and that stuff was soft and really tough to make it right, to be real honest. Worked okay if you're trail riding or just play riding, but when you were on a track or trying to really get after it, that stuff lacked. So this is great. This stuff works really well. And you know, I've said before, this is hands down the best air fork made, the AER 48 here that WP makes, and it's pretty stinking good. I'm not gonna lie to you. I would still prefer a spring if you gave me the option, but this is a great fork. No problems, no complaints. As far as the power goes, you definitely feel the extra horsepower, and you also feel the battery life, or the power stays the same throughout the battery life. On the MX model, I was doing continuous laps, and I got down to about a third of my battery left, and it actually, as a protection for the motor, the battery heated up and it caused the power to drop. It says, you know, power adjusted due to low battery or something like that. And so as that battery gets hot, the power will drop down to a reduced setting until you let the battery cool off or recharge it. So on the MXR, I did not have that. I ran this thing right down to the last little blinking light, and it stayed consistent the whole time. Really strong. It comes on nice and smooth. It would be interesting to me to get in here and see if I could play with mapping a little and make it come on a little harder, or, you know, adjust it to what I like or the track that I'm riding. And that's all doable. This is all stuff that you can do through an app on your phone, I think. If that's not available now, it's coming. The hardest part about riding this thing is not knowing, you know, you're used to RPMs, so when you're coming up to a jump, you kind of know, okay, I'm in this gear, my RPMs are about here, and then you've got a correlated power that you know fits that. You're just kind of in the dark here on this thing until you get used to it, and it's just a matter of putting some time on it. Darren Durham has helped them with a lot of their testing, and I spoke with him extensively about it. He just says, you know what, it takes a few days as far as getting a Supercross track down and knowing where to be with the throttle, but he goes, it just starts to come natural, just like a gas-powered engine. So that was good to hear, and already at the end of the day, I'm feeling much more comfortable on it, kind of having a good idea of what it's going to do. It jumps straight and stable. It doesn't do anything funny when you let off and glide over a jump, so pretty solid that way. The turning ability of this thing is crazy, because you don't have all that rotating mass of a you know, a 4-stroke engine. This thing will just cut in or sweep around. It turns like it's on rails. Really, really fun, and it'll turn really sharp. I don't know if it's because there's not radiators to deal with, but this thing will turn just in a circle. It's crazy. Some of the things that were a little difficult were the sounds, and as you can imagine, you're hearing every other little thing from chain slap to mud. It was a little muddy early on, and with the mud hitting the fenders, I kept pulling over, looking down, seeing if I had a flat. I couldn't figure out what was going on. It's just, you start to hear a lot of these other little sounds that you'd never heard before because it was drowned out by engine noise. But once you get past all that, really fun to ride. And I'll tell you, you can be pretty aggressive, jump pretty much everything you can on a 250F. It's impressive. So if you haven't checked out the Alta Redshift, the MXR is the sort of the gold standard here now. Check one of these out. Amazing bikes. At an Alta dealer near you. You can check them out on their website as well. Thanks for having us out, Alta, and thank you guys for watching.